we're going to go ahead and get started with our briefing. Again, Commissioner Kerr is joining us online today. And we have a couple of briefing items, room for reports if commissioners or our county manager, county attorney have any reports to share this morning. And then we will have an executive session with 2 items. So let's go ahead and jump in. First up, we have Property Tax Increment Revenue Agreement, the Bend Urban Renewal Plan. This will be presented by Abel Montoya. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Good morning, commissioners. I want to recognize Chris O'Keefe, who also helped work on this project, but he's on vacation today, so I'll be filling in. And then, of course, our legal team also helped out quite a bit on this topic, so I'm going to say thank you for that as well. The Property Tax Increment Revenue Agreement is with the Lakewood Reinvestment Authority, and this is for the Bend development, which is located near Highway 6 and Union Boulevard. It is within the city of Lakewood, and it's approximately 59 acres in size. This agreement will allow for the sharing of increment tax revenue generated from additional new development. That new development is comprised of 2,149 apartment units and about 95,000 square feet of commercial retail. It is planned that 216 of those apartment units would be affordable, and the county is working towards getting 120 of those units credited towards our requirements for Proposition 123. And that's why this agreement is so important, to try to meet our wishes for affordable housing in the county. Under this agreement, the Lakewood Reinvestment Authority would retain 65% of the tax increment from the 21.335 mills that the county has. This does exclude the road and bridge portion, which is just a little bit larger than 1 mil, because we already share a portion of that with the city. And if the development produces the required 120 units credited towards the county for affordability, there is a mechanism that would increase the city's share, or the urban renewal area's share of that tax increment over time, if they produce those units by December 31st, 2032. So it's an incentive-based project, which means they would get a higher increment if they produce more units on the site, up to a minimum of 120 for the county's consideration. And so we do hope that the board would approve this at a future public hearing agenda, and staff recommends approval moving forward.
Great. Well, just a huge thanks to you, county attorney's team, Chris, the entire team involved as well in helping us navigate this. We had a number of these come up back to back to back. And so they're all tied together in some respects in terms of how we think about them, but also they have their own unique circumstances as well. And really appreciate the work and the effort that went into this on behalf of the entire team. Thank you very much. So with that, I'll see if Commissioner Zenzinger or Commissioner Kerr have any comments or thoughts, and then we'll find out whether we've got 3 thumbs up.
Yeah.
Just to go ahead, Andrew.
Okay. Yeah, so the Lakewood Reinvestment Authority met last night, and there was a full presentation on this, very detailed presentation on this. 2 things of note, just so that we're aware. Number 1, the water and sanitation piece is not set yet. Largely because this parcel sits within the Green Mountain Water and Sanitation area, and yes, that water and sanitation district, Green Mountain, that has been very disruptive and not a good partner for any development anywhere in the area. There were a couple of alternatives that are being looked at, and so I think things will work out even with Green Mountain dragging their feet here. But so that was one piece I wanted to mention. The other more of an aesthetic thing is that Lakewood has a trolley car that they've invested in, and a group of train enthusiasts have invested in and rebuilt it. And once a year they They pull it out of the shed that it's in on the Federal Center, which is just a couple hundred yards from this site. They pull it out, they have a little event for it, annual event and everything. Because they've been trying to figure out what to do with the trolley to make it more accessible to the public and more of an actual museum or interactive historical piece, the developer and the city of Lakewood have actually come up with some plans to integrate the trolley in the development, that it will go in one of the buildings. It would go there near some of the first floor retail areas and stuff, and then it would become an ongoing point of interest that folks could rent it out for meetings or events. It'd be in its own place. It would have a little track, about a quarter-mile worth of track that it could pull in and out of and stuff like that. Anyways, just a little bit of an aside, but that I think that's something that could really kind of make this development stand out a little bit. And of course, as we've heard before, the reason it's called the Bend is that the W line light rail track actually bends around this area, and there's the Federal Center stop. So this is absolutely transit-oriented development. It's actually surrounded on 3 sides by transit. So just some points in there. And I'm a big thumbs up on this.
Great, thanks, Commissioner Kirk. Commissioner Zenzinger.
I just want to echo the thanks to both the county attorneys and your team as well for really stepping up regarding the affordable housing component. I think this speaks to the 15 years, sorry, I just added an extra 10 years to our plan, but the 15-year affordable housing strategic plan. But this is a really good example, I think, of integrating those objectives into just a regular, everyday, average project. You know, we didn't have to focus on that component. We didn't have to insist on that element, but I'm really glad we did. Because I think it's a good example of how we can take these types of opportunities and connect it to our affordable housing plan. So thank you so much.
Excellent. I think I heard everyone in favor of moving forward, so thanks again, Yvel.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Next up, we've got Development and Transportation Quarterly Update. Come on up, everyone. And we'll begin with doing a round of introductions of everyone who is joining us this morning. Thanks so much for being here. Good to see you all.
Good to see you. Thank you, Commissioner. As everybody's settling in, this is a great opportunity to start introductions. Eric, would you like to start?
Eric Dahl, Airport Director.
Mike Schuster, the Assistant Planning Director. Don't think I've met you, Commissioner Engineer, yet, so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Evan Brown, the Engineering Manager from Transportation Engineering.
I'm Will Truesdale with Road and Bridge.
Abel Montoya, Director, Development and Transportation.
Rita Van Horn, Director of Building Safety Committee.
Nate Romero, Building Safety Operations Manager.
And today we're going to be providing the quarterly update for the Development and Transportation Department. As you can see, here are the directors of the divisions in the department. I mentioned Chris O'Keefe is out on vacation, but Mike Schuster is filling in for him today. And then also Mike Panetta is in the room, but letting some of his staff step up as well as and participate in this presentation. We're appreciative. And then our Road and Bridge Director is here as well.
Yeah, good to see you both. Thanks, Abel.
So on the next slide, some very high level highlights we're going to be talking about here today. They are in regard to transportation and engineering. As you know, we have JC 73 that we've been working on for quite some time in Evergreen. And so that project, we're hoping construction will kick off in May. So we're very excited about that critical improvement in town. We're also excited to see the South Platte River Bridge project be awarded. and start construction down south. So we're excited about that. And then our Safe Streets for All project, we've selected a consultant. We'll highlight that a little bit as well. And that, if you remember, is to the Vision Zero to try to reduce deaths on our roadway systems. So we're excited to kick that off in partnership with all of our cities. And just as a side note, I believe we referenced Westminster and Arvada last time. We learned that they are in partnership with Adams County on their SS4A, but we still plan on coordinating with them on the Jefferson County side as well.
So both, not just Arvada, but
Both.
Westminster too.
Yes.
Great.
Absolutely. In regard to road and bridge, our Bellevue shoulder widening project is underway. That's a very visible corridor. Also, we're beginning our 2025 roadway resurfacing. So you'll see lots of cone zones in the area. And then our ARPA funding for JC 73 is also going to start up, and that's the shoulder widening in conjunction with JC 73 roadway project that we discussed earlier. In regard to planning and zoning, we just completed our first public review for our comp plan and transportation plans. That's where we received more than 500 comments. And so the staff is working really hard on addressing those comments and integrating changes as necessary. We're hoping to have a second round of public review here soon so that the public can see how their comments were addressed in this plan. And then also another exciting announcement, our short-term rental contract is complete. So that's been under works for quite some time. And so we have some plans moving forward that we'll share here today as well. And then, which was mentioned earlier today, the county is focusing on affordable housing. And so our team, along with Kat Douglas in Human Services, is helping to put together a crosswalk across the county. So we've asked all of the department directors to spend the next 30 days focusing on how their policies or intentional work aligns with the crosswalk. So they're filling that in as well. Our next stop will be with the elected officials at the personnel board meeting in the next couple of months to share our goals and outcomes there. And then also to ask them to participate in that crosswalk to the best of their ability. And then we hope to bring that product back to the commissioners and share how we're being intentional about affordable housing. I'm mostly going to focus on things that we already do, but we're probably going to be able to highlight some things that may be new opportunities by virtue of having this conversation that we may be able to pursue as well. In regard to building safety, we have a new operations manager that introduced himself today, so we're happy to have him on board. But hopefully, once we get to the building safety part, you could share a little bit more about yourself and your background to highlight that. Building safety is continuing to work on process improvement to create efficiencies. I think you'll see that in the numbers in regards to the time it takes to review building permits. So we're excited about that collaboration with planning and zoning as well. And then you'll see our permit activity, how that has changed in regard to the many roofing permits that we were seeing in the last couple of years has slowed down just a little bit, which is great because it gives the team a breath of fresh air to work on other things as well. So in regard to the airport, in October, Sim Street was completed. And so we were happy to see that there's some minor cleanup that's happening on that corridor, but it's a very visible, popular road. And so, we've gotten feedback about, is the speed limit right? Is it too slow, too fast on that road? So we've kind of checked in to make sure that the speed limits are right based on the geometry of the road. We'll continue to monitor that as we move forward. Basin 160, a big project at the airport, has been completed. That's the drainage project that keeps the water on site and then discharged at a historical rate, making sure that it's discharged clean into the surrounding area and flows north. Taxiway K, we're hoping to kick that off, as well as D this spring. And that's an important project where it opens up the south part of the airport to potential development for higher and better uses. And so we're looking forward to that process when it comes to a potential RFP later this year. And then lastly, two items at the airport. The Part 150 airport noise study is underway. Our consultant is doing a lot of background work. And we just closed the recruitment for the focus groups. And there were more than 100 residents that wanted to participate on the resident side of the focus group. And of course, space is limited. So the team is right now actively working to screen those folks to make a recommendation to Eric in regard to who might be placed on those committees. So stay tuned. We should have that developed and ready for public knowledge here in the next couple weeks or so. And then lastly, one change on another important environmental component at the airport is unleaded fuel tank. So we've been working very hard and diligently to secure the funding and the contracting to get that in place. Today, we learned that there's a slight change in the timeline. And so Eric will talk a little bit more detail in regard to that. We were hoping to have it fully up and operational in July, but based on recent information from our consultant working on this, it probably won't be until December, but there may be some other items that we might start sooner that Eric is going to share here that we're just thinking about and have to flesh out a little bit more. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to transportation and engineering.
Good morning, Commissioners. Go to the next slide, please. Let's start with the Lookout Mountain Road Corridor Study. So we received our final report in December of last year. The important findings we found were that 50% of the crashes occurred during night, and we're going to continue to monitor that with the gate closure of the roadway through the corridor. We also documented and found our crash patterns through the corridor. At this time, we're just going to continue to monitor the situation with the gates being implemented to see what that reduces in our actual crashes and how that affects the corridor in general. We do have looked at next steps as far as spot treatments, such as the crosswalk or widening on particular locations, such as its curves, and see if we can make smaller improvements there to improve the safety of the corridor over time. Next slide. The South Golden Road Corridor and areas.
We have got one question.
Yeah, before you move on, do you have an update on the situation with the arm?
The last I saw was that the lower gate was not operational. I think that was about a week and a half ago, but I think it was being repaired. I don't know more than that right now.
Okay, so we don't have an update on the timeline.
I don't know.
Do you want to talk about the relationship with our parks and open space?
Yeah, this is a open
Right,
space
is it
run
Matt
gate.
Robbins?
So it's through Matt Robbins, yeah. And he's been updating us each time there is an issue there, if there is one. But yeah, I don't know the timeline for the repair.
We can ask Matt.
Yeah, I would interject that there was significant damage to the gate. And that's the last update that I provided to the board, which was about 2 weeks ago. I can solicit another update from Tom and or Matt and share it with you.
That'd be great.
Thanks,
Joe.
Thanks.
For the South Golden Road Corridor and Area Study, this corridor study is looking at South Golden Road within the limits of Jefferson County and then touching City of Golden to the west and City of Lakewood to the east. The biggest component of the study is determining the full traffic capacity to see what the road can handle. This is in relationship with House Bill 24-1313, which requires 40 dwelling units per acre. So the goal of this study is to determine what can South Golden Road handle traffic wise and how does that affect how many dwelling units per acre we'll move forward with.
I just have to say that's particularly exciting, and I'm eager to hear what the results are because it is such a changing and evolving corridor, especially given some of the land use cases that we've had over the last few years and what that means in terms of potential, well, not potential, but greater density in some of those pockets. So that's exciting to hear that's moving forward.
Yeah, and we'll be working hand in hand with planning and zoning to update as we have our findings. If you look on the lower map, we identified key corridors outside of South Golden Road that will be studied as well as in addition to another key intersections that we'll need to look at if changes need to be made at those locations as well.
So based on the results of this study, if the traffic pattern can't handle it, is that, what do you think our chances are that we could offer that up for the exemptions?
It's possible. It's going to be difficult. In fact, Christina, she's here. I don't know, Christina, do you want to mention a little bit about the parameters on the RFP and scope of work that we're soliciting and kind of what we're wrestling with on exactly that question?
Yeah, so, with the goal will be to find out exactly what the capacity of this corridor is and see if we can back ourselves into a density, D per acre density. One of the things that we have to contemplate as well is, the corridor study will take into consideration, of course, 1313, but also the comprehensive plan, which recommends commercial uses along the entire corridor, which is generally speaking our greatest trip generator, right? So like the Reba development at 12th and South Golden, they came in with 29,000 square feet of commercial retail. That's a much greater impact than what the residential density is there. So as we're working through this project, it'll be really helpful for us to identify what that balance is. Is it saying, well, here's what we need to do to our commercial capacity on the corridor to support 40 dwelling units per acre, of course, taking into consideration the exempt parcels. Or is it finding that balance and work through, see if the policy, the state bill has an exemption that allows us to retain some more of that commercial density to foster a really great multimodal, walkable community. And what that kind of balance is between the two. So we'll be identifying, kind of researching both scenarios of retaining lots of commercial and also still supporting that 40 DO.
Well, I really appreciate it. I know that it's super complicated, and we tried to let the bill sponsors know that, but we were not heard. And so it's frustrating because I sincerely hope that this doesn't dampen our efforts to try and increase affordable housing, because we can't, comply to the letter of the law with the particular formula that they set out for us. It could thereby not allow us to do affordable housing now, which is kind of like the opposite of what we were trying to do, simply because they wouldn't listen. So I really appreciate all of the time and effort that you're putting into it to try and find the right combination and balance. And hopefully, if it turns out that it's just not practical or possible, that they will allow us those exceptions so that we can move forward with affordable housing. It would just be really sad if it stayed the same, because we can't fit into that formula.
And we'll have more detail in June. We have a planned briefing with the commissioners to go over some of our preliminary findings. And those are due to DOLA in June. And so high level, it's about 1,500 acres that qualify. That's enough area for about 60,000 units and 150,000 new people. And that's on average. So these corridors here, like South Golden Road, are really important, as well as other segments in the county that are required to meet this mandate, because even if we get some exemptions in some areas, it may push density in others. So we're trying to weigh which are the best areas for that type of density and mixture as well.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be our challenge, and then trying to figure out how to integrate that into the comprehensive plan in an incremental fashion is something we're working on as well. In June, we'll provide more details.
And I was going to ask how this integrated with our update to the land use code, and kind of how's that going?
And so hand in hand, as I just mentioned, it's incremental. We probably won't have all of the details we need to be in this version of the comprehensive plan. The final analysis is due to DOLA, I believe, December 2026. And so we'll have to update, most likely, the comprehensive plan on this topic alone, House Bill 1313 and density issues. In regard to the regulations, we'll be bringing those forward in a timely manner. And I think also in June, we're hoping to have a conversation on the housing front, some tools that we might be able to use to help encourage affordable housing, whether that's incentive-based or other. So stay tuned.
One of the things too, I know that we've talked about, and I think we'll want to keep front and center, are tools that have come out of the housing blueprint that we have collectively looked at with our mayors, as you know so well. And I know that we had touched upon that in a previous conversation. So listening for those opportunities, those policy levers, I think will be especially important to us.
Absolutely.
There's a way to make that happen.
Sure.
Thanks.
Slide, please. So JC 73, our project contractor is F&F Construction. After the Evergreen Town Hall, I received a lot of positive feedback from community members. I think I had about a dozen emails come in. So it's good. We as a division want to get all the information out and let all the residents know this is what's coming and here are the facts. F&F Construction will be providing public communications for the project, including a project website and hotline for citizens to call. This will include schedules and updates and traffic impacts. The duration, like Abel mentioned, is we're planning to start the second week of May with construction, and it'll go until about November in the fall. There will be no work during the winter months, and we're going to minimize traffic impacts as much as possible. There will be traffic impacts at some points, but we really are trying to minimize them. And that's the key message I wanted to convey to the residents up there, is we're doing our best, but we need to allow our contractor to work on the corridor.
You know, if there's, if we can help echo and repeat those messages, and then there are talking points that you'd like to send us, we'd appreciate it.
Yes.
You know, we kind of tag team on the Evergreen Chamber meeting. It was great because Commissioner Zenzinger joined me for the last Evergreen meeting, and then Andy and I sometimes rotate the Evergreen Chamber meeting just depending on schedules and things like that. So having us all in the know would be terrific. And then also, and you're always really good about this anyway, so if there's anything that goes sideways or anything new that pops up that you think we should know, so we're not surprised if we walk into an Evergreen Chamber meeting or, you know, town hall or anything
Yes.
like that, that's
Yeah.
always helpful too, so. But you're always ahead of us
We'll
anyway.
keep you up to
so.
date.
Yeah, thank you for that.
But we are really excited to get this project kicked off and going here.
It's great. Really good news.
Some updates on our critical structure replacements. The South Deer Creek Road culvert, which is on the right here, has been completed. And then the Brook Forest Road culvert on the left here will be completed within about a week and a half. These are two structures that were failing and were replaced both with a concrete pipe and a concrete box culvert. Our contractor's really been doing a good job, and they're gonna finish ahead of schedule here. And then on Bellevue Avenue, like Abel mentioned, it's a major corridor and has a lot of eyes on it, a lot of traffic going on it. The Mile High Flood District project with Weaver Creek and Bellevue is completed. We did our punch list walk. So all three of those structures have been replaced. And then we are going to be handing this over basically to Road and Bridge here for the shoulder widening. So the Bellevue Avenue improvements, as you can see here, Road and Bridge has started the improvements for the shoulder widening. And this will be paved using their contractor this summer.
Road and Bridge.
All right, thank you. Good morning. So we got quite a few projects going on. Obviously, we're also getting ready to kick off our resurfacing season. So currently, right now, we're working on like Evan said, the Bellevue shoulder widening. We just finished up 3 culverts down there in King Claro Valley with the Mule Deer culvert liners. That's the picture in the bottom left. And then just finished up, matter of fact, yesterday, El Pinel culvert replacement in Evergreen. And then we are also currently working out on Wellington Lake Road. So we've got about 3.2 miles of road, Park County's road, going back to Wellington Lake that we have been ditching, doing a little bit of culvert cleaning and resurfacing of that road currently. Upcoming, we have the low flow culverts, construction of 20 structures around the county in various areas, 2 to 3 minor structures, and then working with T&E on the safety projects for the raised crosswalks and improving the crossings. All right, so we did this spring encounter a few emergency repairs. 3 of them offhand were in the Applewood subdivision of the Liaskin ditch. Of course, they want to get the ditch turned on in April, so we went through all these pipes and noticed, if you look at the picture up there, that's what a lot of these pipes in that area look like. So we had a few emergency repairs to get these pipes switched out real quick so that they could get the ditch on, and get it running on their timeline.
Can I ask a real quick question? When you have to go in for emergency repair like that, how long does that project take from start to finish generally?
It's gonna entail with
Very-
what the engineers want done. So these ones, because they wanted it so fast, we just kind of getting by, and then we'll go back in the fall when they turn the ditch off, and Evan and his crew will engineer something that's more stable.
I see. So this is sort of like a temporary, kind of a Band-Aid to keep everything together, and then we'll come back in and.
Keep it going through the summer, and it really depends. It's a case by case basis, depending on what drainage way, whether it's a ditch or a floodplain. You know, what do we have here, or the condition of the road as well.
Right.
But it really depends case by case.
That's a mess.
Yeah. We do have a lot of pipes that look like that and we need to replace.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
So a few of the outside projects that we're doing, for other departments, we have open space in the Denver Mountain Parks project. So open space, we're doing Elk Meadows Park and Highwan Homestead Museum. They're both parking lots. Elk Meadows, we started last year with all the drainage improvements and the shoulder widening. And then this year we'll go in there and pave that. And then Highwan, we're doing some high back curb and gutter. This week right now, we're addressing all the drainage, and then we'll be in there to pave that. And then Denver Mountain Parks, that's building a road for their maintenance facility. Going from the lake house up to their maintenance facility, they just want a 12-foot lane road paved to the golf course. And for our contracts, so like I said earlier, we're getting ready to kick off our resurfacing operations on May 1st. Hopefully we don't get any of those crazy spring storms anymore, and delay us anymore. So our plan this year in-house is to do the 80 lane miles, mostly the local roads in the Evergreen Conifer area. For the contractor, we have 120 lane miles planned. Some of the big corridors, we have Coal Mine, Bellevue, obviously JC 73 and Barkley Road. We have started, contractors have started. They started on March 27th in a few subdivisions, Wayside, West Laurel Lake and 72nd Avenue. And then obviously not on this slide, but the concrete too. I'm sure everybody's got the emails about the concrete this weekend here at the Taj.
I have a question for you. How are you feeling right now about just the kind of portfolio of contractors that you can work with to keep up with this work, as well as our in-house, as you mentioned here on this slide, team, knowing that one of our challenges has been recruitment and retention? What is that looking like right now to tackle these projects, especially as we think about that 1A funding, but I know that's down the road, so.
I just want to briefly frame it, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So on May 6th, you're going to be hearing information that we're sharing about proposals for some of the 1A considerations. And I think one of those is, as you mentioned, not just project-based. That's important to get to structures like that pipe you saw failing, trying to get to those as soon as possible, and better yet, have maintenance so that they don't get to that point. So there's a longer life and don't have significant disruptions. So that's one thing we're considering. The other one is staffing. We've had challenges to keep our road and bridge staff there. We have several vacancies, and we have for many, many years, 20 plus. And we believe that's because of the market rate for hourly employees that have commercial driver's license. So we'll have to address that in some capacity. We have a plan for that you'll hear at some point in the near future. And we think that if we get those folks fully staffed, that'd be a good baseline to continue this work with that share of internal work versus contractor work. We have done some outreach to general contractors that do this type of work to learn more about their capacity. All of them so far have said that they do have the capacity to do more work. And in fact, some of them may prefer to do work in Jefferson County because their costs are lower because of their locations of their businesses. And so if that reduces their fuel costs and wear and tear on their equipment, so we may actually be a front runner in being competitive in those contracts as well.
That's great news. That's
Absolutely.
actually plus. Yeah.
And I would love to hear any other items that you want to share.
No, I mean, you said it perfect. Everybody knows where Martin Marietta's at, so they don't have to go set up a plant. We'll be saving them time and money. Right here locally, right next door to us. So I mean, you said it perfect.
Yeah, and I just said, we have Edge Contracting. I think their shop's right next to Central Shop for Road and Bridge. And they're always asking, do you have more projects coming out? We're ready to go, so.
Oh.
It's great to hear.
Before we make the transition to PMZ, just one more highlight. We were contacted by Google Fiber. We worked with them over a year ago, and they had questions about how we allow fiber to be in our right of way. And so we learned more about their process, talked to some of our stakeholder partners. And we said, tell us when you're ready to put in fiber, tell us where you want to put in fiber, and we can talk about the exact methods that would be acceptable to the county. But we hadn't heard from them after that point. So it's been more than a year, but they did re-engage with us. So we're happy to see that. We've set up some meetings in May to work with them. And we really want to focus on project-based discussions. So we want to know what subdivisions, what areas in the county that they have plans to put in fiber. So we can work with them on the best method. Some of these projects that we have planned can be coordinated with fiber installation. And so you can see just on the shoulder paving in that previous image, that would be a great opportunity for fiber to be underneath that area. And so that way you don't have to disturb the roadway in such a way that would cause premature maintenance needs. And so those are the kinds of things we're working on. We'll be happy to update you once we meet with them.
So I engaged with them at a Jeffco EDC meeting that was actually held at the G Fiber building, which is a new office location for their national headquarters, by the way, right there in Lakewood. And since we've talked to them initially, they've been doing a lot of work in the area, and they now have formal agreements, signed agreements with the city of Lakewood, the city of Westminster, and including active construction in those areas. They also have agreements with Douglas County and Adams County and a couple of other municipal jurisdictions outside of Jefferson County. So I think when we first engaged with them, it was pretty new. And I think that they've learned some lessons about, just the significant concerns that we would have regarding, upending our roads and who's going to take care of that and what happens, long term as far as maintenance agreements. But I think a lot of that has been hammered out now. So the planning is better now. And I just think that it'll be a more productive conversation going forward because we have some actual concrete agreements that we can look to with other counties. And if it's good for them, they probably have the same concerns that we have. So
I think all those points are going to be really important moving forward because what we hear, as you know so well, because we share these emails with you and ask for some assistance in responding, are from constituents who say, why is this box going in my front lawn? And is this really right away? And what does that look like? And then, of course, we immediately try to sort through, are they in the city of Lakewood, for example, where we're getting a number of emails from, or is it really unincorporated Jeffco? I know living in an unincorporated Jeffco in the Bear Creek Village area that we just received a notification of fiber optics going in as well. So I think part of the challenge for us becomes, how do we communicate about this work with constituents, the role of the county, and then get them in touch with someone at Google or the appropriate person to help navigate them and get them to who they need to talk to about concerns that they may have. So I would just put that on the table as something that we could really use some additional help with, just so we can get constituents to who they need to talk to. And, I typically go through Sarah, who will then maybe reach out to Andy or to your team to do that. But if you have any kind of clarifying points on that, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the public relations part is critical.
Yes,
So
I agree.
We definitely want to talk with
Thank
all
you.
of our utility companies about that,
Yeah.
including Google and others. But thank you.
But I was concerned about the micro-trenching concept in general and just its impact on maintenance in the future. But it sounds to me like they're taking it on. They really truly say, we will maintain it. So that is what I'm hearing from other folks, that if they're going to take a micro-trenching approach and there are any disruptions to the maintenance of that road or that, shoulder, that they take care of it. So I
Yeah,
think
we're looking
that's-
forward to the conversation. For
Yeah.
sure. We'll report back what we learned.
And then just, we do have we do struggle in some areas, less so in Jeffco than other rural parts of Colorado, but we still do struggle with connectivity and making sure that everybody has access. So I feel that it's just really, really important. So many of our services are delivered over the internet and, you know, being able to make appointments and work and so on and so forth. So.
Absolutely. Thank you. So we'll transition to planning and zoning.
Okay. So this first slide is just provides some of our stats for the first quarter of this year compared to the first quarter of last year. And amazingly, our stats seem to stay pretty consistent throughout every year. It's weird how you get that consistency, but a couple ones I want to talk about are the total contacts. We have a policy to try to return phone calls within 24 to 48 hours. You can see that our total contacts are down a little bit in this first quarter. And we believe that's because we're getting more caught up and are able to return phone calls quicker. And therefore, we're not getting those people who have to call multiple times in our numbers. So that's good news. And then the other one of note here, the public hearing cases, looks like we've got a pretty big increase of cases coming in that go to public hearings, and those primarily are variance cases.
There were cases?
Variance.
Variance, okay.
Yeah, so something that will go to the Board of Adjustment. And there is a slight uptick in rezoning cases as well this first quarter. So, next slide. So here's the list, a list of some of the things that are happening that planning and zoning is involved in. Together, Jeffco updates for the CMP and the ULUC, the regulation updates. We'll talk about those a little bit further in some next slides. Just want to give you an update on the 5950 grading permit. This was the grading permit off of McIntyre Street, where they were relocating the ditch. This grading permit was approved, and some of the neighbors appealed that decision to the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment upheld the appeal, and currently there's, I think, an appeal to district court on that case. So stay tuned. We'll see where that ends up. Short-term rental process. We will talk about that one in just a little bit. Housing, the CMP and the TMP crosswalk. Avell did a good job of explaining that one in the beginning, so I won't go into that one. We are making progress on our violation backlog. We've got a pretty big backlog, and it's for a lot of different reasons. Kind of completing violation cases. It's our staffing issues, the number of complaints that we've had working with the county attorney's office and some turnover in the county attorney's office. We're working through those issues, and we're kind of getting a good handle on those, on that backlog now. So that's good. We're not current yet, but we're making some good progress. We also continue to work very closely with the county attorney's office on a lot of things. Just we have Chris has a meeting with the county attorney's office on a weekly basis to talk about coordination type issues. We also have implemented something called the LUCA, which stands for Land Use County Attorney Meeting. This has been
All our acronyms straight.
yeah, it's very close to ULUC.
Right.
But this meeting has been really good because we've been able to take some issues that may have been issues that planning and zoning has had for a while and really hasn't had that opportunity to discuss in great detail with the attorney's office. And so now we have this time set aside to be able to talk about those types of issues and coordinate and come up with some decisions on how to move forward on certain things. Our Amanda process, our county attorney's office is also going to start using Amanda, which is our software tracking system, and that will help them and us keep track of the projects that they're working on for us and the reviews that we need from them. Building permit collaboration, we'll let our building safety division talk about that a little bit more, but we really are excited about the collaboration that we have with building safety now and trying to work on making the building permit process more efficient.
Have you seen a decrease in the timeline for issuing those permits yet, or?
In some respects, yes. We are down to what our goals are, for sure. At least our previous goals. We have some new goals that we want to reach, which are even faster. So we're working on getting even quicker on those reviews. But we've reached our, in planning and zoning, at least our 21-day review time that we have pretty consistently. Next slide. So this slide is about the Together Jeffco. One of the things of note that Avel did mention in this was the 574 public comments that we received. That's a lot of comments. Most of them were related to our land use and strategic growth chapter and the future land use map. It's a big job for Heather Gutherless and her crew because they are going through every one of these comments and responding and making sure that the plan is reflecting what it needs to reflect. We had a PC work session on April 11th. That was a Friday. So that was fun and pretty much an all-day event that I didn't attend, but Avel attended with a bunch of our other staff. And we still are looking at having our public release in May, and we're on track. We think we're on track for hearings in fall.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's incredible. Have you given any more thought, or have you had a chance to think about where those public comments and responses would be posted? Are you thinking probably online somewhere, or more to come on that?
I'm pretty sure they will be on our website.
Part of that Together Jeffco.
Yeah. I mean, we're
That's
trying to
great.
be really transparent so folks can see what others are saying and then how they're being addressed. So that's going to be on our website. And then we're also going to be releasing that new draft so people can then reflect on those comments back to the new draft and verify on how those are being addressed.
That's great.
Quick question. What is the Hatton property?
The Hatton property. We have a
Yeah,
It's
it
the
had the
second
most-
bullet point under
It has the
574.
most
Right where the
comments.
arrow
What
is.
is it? Yeah.
good question. I think of the Hatton property as a different issue. But do you?
Is that the one with the drainage issue?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what Chris may have been referencing here, other than to say maybe in that vicinity, there were lots of comments. That particular property, if I recall, there were some drainage concerns about a project where we looked into that and verified that there weren't any drainage concerns based on our regulations, but that the neighborhood did express some. And so I'm not entirely sure how Chris intended that to come across. Do you know, Mike?
I'm sorry.
We
Is
can-
it 285 corridor area? Is that Conifer?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to follow up and share more information, Commissioners, once I hear back from Chris.
Okay, thanks.
Next slide. So we continue to work on our regulation updates with Brownstein, Hyatt, Farber and Schreck. This slide shows some of the sections of the regulations that we've reviewed to date. I'll go into each of those. We did have an advisory committee meeting on April 3rd. We think that we'll be doing our public outreach in the fall on this project as well, and that hopefully we'll be looking at spring to mid next year for the hearing process.
So that advisory committee, is that the initial group that involved citizens and different people on the Together Jeffco process specifically for the land use component?
Yes.
Great, because I was gonna say that. I had a couple of them reach out to me, I think back in March maybe, because I had given a public update in a forum about the Together Jeffco process. And a few of them were like, we're on the committee and we had no idea, so I'm really glad that we've kind of circled back and re-engaged that group, because I do believe that there is so much that is happening sort of like behind the scenes. And they were very involved initially up front. And so I'm really glad that we circled back and re-engaged with that group to let them know that we're still working on it. And your work was, pivotal in getting us to where we are today, but,
We tried to keep them in the
Right.
know of what was happening, but when we switched our contractors
Yeah.
from to Brownstein, we did have a delay in meetings that we held with them. So this it was good to get back in and engage with them.
that's fantastic. Do you have another one scheduled?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
So I think we have at least one, if not two more scheduled with them, both on the comprehensive plan side and on the regulation side.
Because I would be really curious to hear what their thoughts and opinions are on all of the comments that we've received, from the public, just sort of through their eyes, getting their impressions on that, on the feedback that we've been receiving. So
Do you know
Us
what
too.
comprehensive-
I don't know the dates. I know Heather has them. Right now, we're still trying to adjust the timeframes from the ULOC and the comp plan to make them marry a little better so that we're not duplicating efforts when we're touching base with the advisory commission or the planning commission. And so I know that they're upcoming. I want to say sometime this summer when we release the next draft is about the same time when we're checking in with all those groups.
okay, thanks.
Excellent. So the last few slides that I have are on our favorite topic, short-term rentals.
I was hoping for this.
So we continue to work on our short-term rental.
We're taking a lot of hits.
That's right. A lot of questions out there. When are they coming for?
So we've had a lot of activity on short-term rentals. We're making there's some really good momentum moving us towards short-term rental regulations, hopefully this year. We've had a couple of working sessions, well, actually one working session with the VOA to go over the changes. The VOA right now is the one who hears all short-term rentals, and this would take short-term rentals away from the BOA primarily, but they do have a
They're
lot of
okay with it.
opinions.
Yeah.
They're okay with that part of it, but they do have a lot of opinions on what short-term rentals should look like. So we had that session with them that went really well. We also have a session tomorrow with the Planning Commission to kind of go through the highlights of the regulation process. We continue to work with Host Compliance, which is the monitoring software that we've contracted with. We aren't officially using that software yet for any enforcement or letters or anything like that, but we do monitor it, and you can see the last bullet point here. That we continue to increase in the number of short-term rentals that Host Compliance is identifying out there. So now the number is at 771. So there's quite a number of short-term rentals. One of the things we're working on right now is kind of the balance between what is going to be in an ordinance and what is going to be in our zoning resolution. So that's kind of our big task right now.
What's the key issue about that?
The key issue, I believe, and I think the lawyers could talk about this probably more than we could, but the key issue is primarily the enforcement side of the short-term rental process and what fines can be if somebody is in violation and what penalties can be if they do not comply.
And I think that this is one of the areas where we often get criticized just simply because of the sheer number. And I do think that one of the solutions that you have come up with regarding hiring a firm to help with this enforcement is key. And just to clarify, are they now moving forward with enforcement?
The enforcement side will not be done through that firm.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The firm that we have will be the monitoring side primarily.
Uh-huh.
And what'll happen is if they go out and they find a property that's running a short-term rental, they don't have a permit, they do follow through with things like letters and compliance letters and those types of things. They also monitor, they have a 24/7 hotline that we monitor, which is going to be complaints about short-term rentals and what might be happening on a property that has a permit. But the enforcement side is still going to be a requirement of.
Yeah.
It's going to be what?
A requirement of Jefferson County.
Sheriff's Office.
So that's a very technical answer, right? So,
Yeah.
so it's a partnership with the company that's helping us manage that. I think technically it has to come from the county in regard of it being a violation or not.
And then just to clarify, is that in part some of the members of the enforcement team through our different divisions who then would work with those property owners or go on site? And then, of course, the sheriff's office if it's more intense, but.
Yeah.
And then what do we, let me ask you another question about capacity, which is something we talked about earlier. Is there the capacity to address the sheer volume that we're facing in terms of enforcement? Because enforcement without the people behind it to actually enforce it is really concerning. And then it sort of brings us back full circle to where we've been in the concerns that have been expressed by community members.
I can tell you we would need more in the county attorney's office if we're gonna do anything about that.
So county attorney's office, planning and zoning, yeah.
So one of the things that we're also doing is trying to overlap existing short-term rental locations that we know about versus what the regulations would be to see which ones there may be gray areas or non-compliance issues in some areas more than others. And so based on that volume, we can anticipate how much work we might have for enforcement. We're also thinking about how do we roll this out so it's in stages and not all at once, so we're not overwhelmed. And so that's part of the implementation strategy that we're still working through is how do you launch that? That might be part of the regulation or it might be part of the ordinance. But certainly we have to make sure the software is up and running, which I believe it's already being tested. We're getting really close to say, yes, it's final. That's going to be the mechanisms that people can make application for short-term rentals, but then also the coordination with the third party and reporting what they're hearing from neighbors that have concerns and things like that. Now, our regulations, I think, are pretty much complete. It's just some of the fine details on the relationship of which document has what elements. And again, that's the regulation or the ordinance. And so Mike, do you have an estimated time when we might be ready to launch public meetings and share that and that kind of thing? Are we talking weeks? Are we talking months?
We're talking months, but it's probably not more than 2 or 3 months.
Well, and I would imagine we would have an exec session with the commissioners to discuss the ordinance versus regulation issue and get guidance from them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the commissioners, we plan on sharing those final documents with you to get feedback. And then also because we fully anticipate lots of public comments on this topic.
Oh,
And
I
that
agree.
everybody should be well aware of what we're working on, how to address it. Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, I would imagine that the ordinance versus the regulation would be direction from you guys and not due to public comment. So.
Thank you.
Val, I do have a question regarding the number that host compliance has identified. I think about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer, we were thinking that we had more along lines of 900 to 1,000.
Right.
Was that previous number just our best guess at that point? And now we have a better, more accurate number based on host compliance?
Yes. So initial estimates from host compliance was closer to the 900 number. And so they're refining this continuously. And as you can imagine, the market changes when people stop doing it or start doing it. There are some exceptions here where it's hard to find some addresses. I think on multifamily units, for example, or apartment units, it's a little harder to verify those. Whereas if it's a standalone alone unit, it's a lot easier to identify that. So it's not 100% accurate, but it's a lot better than what we had. And I think that continuous monitoring of different platforms that advertise this is really, I think, a major benefit by using host compliance. And then also having a 24-hour reporting mechanism to track these things so we can figure out how best to handle them. Back to the enforcement part, our hope is that the fees generated from these help support the program. So the fees for short-term rentals should pay for the software element, which wasn't terribly expensive. I think we got it down to less than $60,000. And then there's an annual maintenance cost. But then also any staffing needs like code enforcement officers or maybe even county attorney help might be able to be paid for through those fees as well.
One more comment on inspections and violations. The process that we're anticipating is going to be a lot simpler than what our current process is and cheaper for people to register their short-term rentals. So the hope is that once we get this system out there, that our compliance rate is going to be fairly high and that there will not be a lot of violations. The people that are in violation, it'll just be notifying them that they need to come in and get a permit, and then they can make that happen fairly easily. So we'll see how that goes, but that's the hope.
One last note, if I could, just because it seems so timely. One of the reasons we've had a delay on the software side is because of the system we're using. It's Amanda, you've heard us reference that. And it's an older, antiquated software system that not a whole lot of people use anymore, just because there's newer types of platforms that allow staff to make changes very easily, that then become the administrative part. Whereas the current software system really requires our IT staff to sometimes hire out consultants to write the code and integration processes for these different permit mechanisms. And so at some point in the near future, you're going to hear a lot more about how that complicates a lot of the work that Brita does in building or how planning and zoning integrate. But then also more importantly, as we talk about wildfire permitting for defensible space and things like that, there's a lot of effort that would have to go into integrating that system with Amanda that will be expensive and time consuming. Whereas integrating a newer software system might be better long-term, but might have a higher investment cost up front. So just a heads up. Okay, Mike, you're up.
Next slide. This slide just, we've talked about.
I'm
just
sorry.
Oh,
Before we move on, do we have mechanisms for the public to know where we are with regard to this public facing? If they're concerned, they've been watching this, from the public's perspective, it doesn't look like anything's happening, and that's because we're doing all of this work on the back end. And if they wanted to get an update and they wanted to know where we are, is there something that is public facing so that they can get that?
So I know we have kind of a sign up mechanism for folks that want to follow our regulation updates in general. And as progress is made, that's a push notification. So it's sent out to everybody who signed up. And I'm not sure when the last time we did a push notification, but
Yeah.
I would say it's about time we send out an update.
I would really recommend it, just because I get a lot of inquiries from constituents. And so I went ahead and just did like a quick search and I couldn't find anything that I could refer them to that, would help keep them updated. Or so short of me then emailing you and then getting an update from you and then me passing it on to them. I was just wondering if there was something out there that kind of showed where we were in the timeline. Give the public an opportunity to have an update on all of this great information that's happening, but they don't know that it's happening.
It's a great suggestion. We'll definitely get that done. Okay.
Thanks. Now we can move on, sorry.
And if you would send us the link. We get it out.
We will.
Thanks.
This slide is just a snapshot of our dashboard that is through host compliance. We can skip back that. It just shows the 771. And this slide is the last slide. It just basically identifies some of those aspects that we are planning on putting into the regulations. I think you've heard this before, but it's not going to be going to the BOA anymore. It's going to be an administrative process. We're eliminating this 1 acre minimum lot size, which was very limiting for people when they wanted to do a short-term rental. There'll be two categories, primary residence and an investment property with slightly different rules for each of those. We do have the third-party monitoring for the short-term rentals, and we're expanding the short-term rentals to be in different types of housing types. That's just a few of the highlights of the regulations.
Thank you, Mike. I'll hand it over to Brita and Nate.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have Nate Romero joining us, and instead of reading about Nate, I'll have him introduce himself to you.
Yeah, so my name is Nate Romero. I come from the city of Arvada. I worked there close to 25 years. Worked in the utilities for a little bit and then mostly in the building department. Great place to work, but I'm excited to be here with Jefferson County to do, my second half of my chapter of my career. I'm excited to be here and a great group of people that I'm surrounded by, so I appreciate that. I'm currently the Colorado chapter of ICC, which is the International Code Council. I'm the president of that chapter this year, for the 2025 year. I serve as the director of the educational committee, which we do an educational institute every year for all of our people in our industry that have to gain certifications and CEUs. So that's a week-long institute that I help put on. And I'm just really involved with a lot of stuff that we do with our chapter as far as Give a Day and building futures and trying to get individuals to be involved within our industry and get them kind of excited about what we do. I'm also a planning commissioner for the city of North Glen and the Board of Adjustments. So once again, I'm excited to be here. I can't wait to be involved with what we do here. So
Nate, what does CEU stand for? Is that like an educational component of the work that you do that has to be updated? Like, is it CLEs for lawyers or?
yeah, so it's a continuing educational unit. So you have to get certain amount of units to recertify your certification.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're excited to have Nate here. In some other additional updates to our staffing, we've had some vacancies for a while. And so Russ Heckel, who you might know, has been working on wildfire comments back to the state board. He's now our plans examiner supervisor, and we are actually actively interviewing for our last supervisor position for permitting and administrative supervisor. So we're excited that we're nearing full staff, which is great. Next slide, please. Every quarter we report on our permitting activity, and here you'll see, Isabel mentioned, our roofing permitting, which was really affecting our workload and permit numbers for 24 and part of 23 as well. That's kind of finished, which is great. We're happy to be back to what is more normal numbers. So you'll see the first quarter 2025, which is pretty fast paced, but a good steady workload for us. So we're happy to be back to that number. Go ahead with the next slide. We're also seeing our plan review turnaround times decrease. I think maybe, hopefully, you've seen less people reaching out to you with questions about permit activity or where their permit might be in the process. We are revising how we measure this a little bit. We were getting some skewed numbers based on permits that would sit for quite a while after they were ready. And so we were calculating issuance time versus our active time working on them. So this is an average of all permits that get some sort of review. Some permits obviously get longer reviews because they're big projects, and then we have some things that are done within a day. So this is a better average of all permits that need a review. So we'll track it this way going forward. So this number is a little bit different from the way we were measuring it last year. I just wanted to point that out to you, but this is the way we can have a fresh marker and then measure it the same way going forward. But we're seeing that improve definitely. We're seeing total permit turnaround times as well decreasing, and as Mike mentioned, we're working on strategies with planning and zoning to look at other options to even drive that down further. So we can report back to you more on that when we have more. Just a real quick update, and you're very aware of this, wildfire regulations. So the state, the second draft that the state is accepting comments on, the comments are due May 2nd. We're going to have those comments from our departments, both planning and zoning and building safety. We'll send them to Vel late this week, and then we'll get them off to the state as well before their May 2nd deadline. They are holding 4 public hearings at the beginning of May, and I've listed the locations there. We will be participating in that as well. We are, and thank you, Commissioner Dahlkemper, for your work on working with the legislators to try to extend our implementation deadline and work on the governing bodies issue. And so we're monitoring that. We're hoping for that extension, which when this was created was not, we weren't sure the time frame, but looks like it might be 9 months if that passes. So we're watching that as well.
I had a list of thank yous, but I'm gonna just jump in really quick here with a thank you because there was no way we could have done that work without Brita. And I also want to recognize Kathy Parker as well. Is Kathy here?
Yeah.
Hey, Kathy. Just the fact that you both were on call over those days and then that evening, because that hearing committee went until about 9:30, and I think we didn't get a chance to testify until 9 o'clock at night. And so there were some changes that came in around, I think 5:30, and it was so helpful to just be able to have your eye on it. I know Kathy helped with tweaking some of those talking points, which was really helpful. So, and then also just your entire team's in-depth look at these WUI codes, what they mean for Jeffco, where we're advancing, where there might still be some gaps that we need to make up the difference. So thank you, huge thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll come back to the other thank yous in a minute.
Yeah, we are timing our building code update, and a regulation update to coincide with the WUI requirements as well, just to make it simple for everyone.
And before we jump to the next topic, I just wanted to also mention on May 6th, we're planning to have 30 minutes with the commissioners to talk all things wildfire. And so that's going to be a more in-depth perspective of the things Brita and others have been working on. But then also, you know, how do we plan on integrating larger discussions on wildfire in regard to P&Z and building safety and others. So just a heads up.
Real quick, we've been mentioning this just briefly. We are working on a department work plan or strategic plan. We had our first all hands on deck SWOT analysis session, and out of that came the mapping of our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, obviously. So in quarter two, we're going to continue with the impact and effort analysis and creating some actionable goals. And then in Q3, we're going to be drafting the actual plan and creating metrics. So we'll keep updating you on that. We're excited to have our team creating kind of their first plan and going through this process, many of them for the first time. So it's exciting.
Rita and team, I know we're running late on time, but this has been such a great conversation, and I am going to ask another question. It's been really great in terms of the questions that have been coming up. But I would love to go to threats, field safety, energy shortage, state mandates. State mandates, can you just, just very briefly, what are the key themes that come up for you? Is it energy codes? Is it WUI? Is it?
It's really navigating when there's been a lot of them coming our way in the last few years with mandates on energy and solar and EV charging. Yeah, there's a carbon code that's going to be coming out. There's the WUI requirements that are being written at the state level and then pushed down. So it's just navigating that. And I think staff feel it's a challenge. Should I try to navigate how to do the work we do, providing building safety, and then integrating all these things when sometimes they're not necessarily the easiest things to integrate. So just regulations that come down that maybe don't quite integrate with our regulations smoothly, we have to try to navigate that. That's challenging.
And then field safety, what are the threats, just again, high level?
Well, I mean, half of our staff is out in the field, outside, working in job construction sites every day. And so they're navigating a lot of hazards, snow.
Those are ongoing threats.
Traffic, dogs.
Safety.
They're really looking to have a discussion. There's just, construction sites and, our road and bridge folks and, they deal with the same things. There are a lot of hazards out there. So it's just being aware of it and having strategies to navigate and actually just having the discussion about what are they running into so that we can help mitigate that really. We haven't really had a lot of opportunities to do that in a very formal way, so that we're now basically creating an avenue for staff to be able to provide feedback so that we can create a plan to how to deal with those things.
So with regard to state mandates, if we could kind of go back to that for a minute.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything that you don't all already know, which is when the state preempts local control on very particular things, small things, which in the grand scheme of things, you think, oh, well, it doesn't really matter that we're going to exempt properties that are affordable housing that's being built on church properties, for example, versus the codes that apply to all other types of building. In their mind, thinking, that what we're doing is we're trying to impact affordability, we're trying to break down barriers, we're trying to make things go quicker and What I don't think that our state partners truly understand is that that is adding a level of complexity that increases costs. It increases because we're one-offing it. It doesn't fully comport with our regulations. And so we now have to create a whole nother set of separate regulations that are operating in conjunction. And then we do it for transit oriented development, and then we do it for this. And so pretty soon, we have seven different types of approaches towards regulations, all of which require more time, more resources, and it's counter to the whole goal of trying to simplify things and make things more affordable, right? And so I think that we have to do a better job as county and local governments of telling that story. So far, it's all been very reactionary because we're seeing more and more of it. So we're having to react and try to explain this to very well-intentioned legislators that are just trying to make a dent on affordable housing, right? Or transit urban development or whatnot. So I would be really interested in thinking about that more globally as a county and figuring out ways that we might be able to step up our narratives, our storytelling, our engagement with our legislators and other state planners so that they can understand those barriers beforehand, right? Before we are in a position where we have to oppose a bill that's going to pass anyway, and then we're just going to have to figure out how we're going to make some sort of density formula work and not impact affordable housing. And we're going to have to make some sort of, building safety adjustments on manufactured housing, for example, because we're trying to get more factory built homes in Colorado. I mean, it's all very well intentioned, but I think that the hurdle is that the people creating policy don't actually know how it gets implemented on the ground. And so we need to think about ways of stepping up our engagement and our education around that. And I'm happy to step into that role. And I think the Board of County Commissioners is happy to try and help lead those conversations. But I can't do it because I don't know your jobs. I don't know how you guys get this stuff done. So I really need that backing or that expertise to pair with my advocacy in trying and reset the balance with the state conversation, because it really bothers me, and it's all well intentioned, but we right now know that some of the mandates that are going to be coming down are creating more time, more effort, higher costs, and I don't see in the long run how that helps us achieve our goal.
Yeah, and I think this is something we've all struggled with, right, over the last, for some time, I should just say, in terms of exactly what Commissioner Zenzinger has talked about. And I think it's something that we all want to be in the loop on as we advocate and as these opportunities pop up. I think maybe what we might want to think about is, are there ways that we can improve with Kate's help and Karen Wick's help and Jason's, the way we tell our stories here in Jefferson County? And how do we work with Kate and that team to identify them ahead of time with your help? And oftentimes we sort of do that as we can do it because we're all running 1,000 miles per hour. But in that time off legislative session, perhaps we can pull this group together to think about how do we strategize moving forward, or maybe even in the early fall, late summer, early fall, as we begin to get wave of or hear about different bills coming forward. I think it's something we all need to be in the loop on, and also grateful for everything you do when we're right in the middle of it. I mean, that bill we just talked about is the perfect example of it.
It really
So
is.
thank you.
Yeah.
So DNT is starting that narrative. We're working with Cassie on putting that together, and that should be completed in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And we're hoping to share that with Joe and Kate to build on it, because it's going to take time to get our entire story.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Commissioners, also just a reminder, I think we're going to be doing a debrief from the legislative session, and I think what you were just sharing, that would be a good point for us to bring that up again and talk about next steps, because it is good feedback for us.
And I will also say that might be a good work session conversation. Because that really is an opportunity to dig in, have a conversation, put on the table, these are the challenges that we're facing, and then let's strategize around it. That's how I think we should be using work sessions. That's just my own personal view, where we really have an opportunity to kind of tackle this together, figure it out. So and we are really sorry. I just want to note, there's so much, and I know you've got more. So is there anything just briefly you want to share? And
just to wrap it up, I would like to go on the offensive instead of the defensive. And just having served in the legislature, I know that it's kind of too late now, when the session is in session. I know that legislators will, kind of take a little bit of a break, but then they're going to start thinking about next year. The governor's office is already working with their departments and divisions. They have to put in their budget requests in August, right? So they're already starting to think about what is on the docket for them next year. And I think that during the interim is really the time when we need to be stepping up our engagement, hosting sessions with our legislators and walking them through like a hands-on, this is how we approve a building permit, right? These are the steps that have to, take place. Walking them through, building safety concerns and all the things that you have to be thinking about, because I guarantee you, they don't know. And the complexity, right? Doing some hands-on field trips, going to the places where we are permitting and the kinds of things that you have to physically do, right? I just think that if they go through that process, maybe they will be more inclined to listen to us later when we bring up concerns and work with us as partners. But we got to go on the offensive. We got to quit this defensive stuff.
And perhaps that's also part of that study session that we talk about, is taking a look at how we currently set aside that breakfast that we have with legislators, and do we want to mix that up and the time and all that good stuff. Brita, was there more that you had as part of your presentation?
No, you can see the folks from our staff that attended the Wildfire Safety Fair that was sponsored by Xcel Energy, and that's our last slide.
Okay.
You just flip through the next one.
We have one last part, and
Okay.
that's just update from the airport, and I think there's just a couple major elements that are.
Okay.
I can go really fast.
You don't have to. You don't have to.
You don't have to.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No,
Yeah.
it's fine. It's all pretty routine. We'll talk about maybe some of the stuff, the 150 study, a little bit more detail. But for the Sims construction, the road is done. Like Abel said earlier, we're doing some cleanup on the easements, cleanup on some of the sides of the road. We're ready for the bisection of Calendar Drive when taxiway Kilo cuts through it in the spring. We'll talk about Kilo in a little bit. Nearly all the land in the Verve has been sold or under a purchase and sale agreement at this point in time. So we should see a lot of that getting filled out by October this year once the large lot goes through. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, taxiway Kilo is scheduled to start once we can finish up with Xcel and easements and right-of-way concerns. Otherwise, taxiway Kilo will cut through and bisect Calendar Drive. And that's one of the important things for Sims, to make sure that when Calendar Drive is bisected, we put proper cul-de-sacs and things on Calendar so there's good turnarounds for fire trucks. Basin 160 has been completed. That, as Abel said earlier, helps us maintain historical flows of water flow off the airport. And that's probably it for that slide, unless there's questions. Okay, so the Part 150 study, we do have a consultant on board for the Part 150 study. From April 4th to April 20th, we did have the form available on our website for people who are in the community that wanted to participate in the airport user group and the community member focus group. We had 100 applicants, 75 for the community member group and 25 for the airport user group. From a wide spectrum of, we put 8 areas around the airport. One area only had one submission, unfortunately, but we've had areas with up to 26, 29 different submissions as well. So we should have a good cross section of that. Abel's team is doing the review on those submissions to help us judge or look at what would be good participants in that group. And once we have those done, April 30th, early May, we should be ready to announce who those people are for those focus groups. There's not a lot more else to talk about than the 150 unless there's questions. All right. So the unleaded fuel tank, we do have Wolpert selected to do the design, engineering, and administration of that tank. We have 75% and 99% design drawings with the FAA. FAA has gone through those and approved those. We do have a little bit of slowdown with NEPA and the administration doing reviews on all of the airport's environmental studies to make sure that we're following all the proper steps that we'd have to do for that. It's going through a little bit more elevated review process than it has in the past for this kind of project. And we've never built a tank at the airport before. So it's a new experience for us. And this does need to go through the NEPA process. And this administration has made all NEPA processes go to DC for their own review. So that is slowing things down a little bit. This being an unleaded tank may get additional attention. And that's not because of the FAA grant, that's just any airport development as a whole goes through NEPA. And so it all has to go to DC for review. We do expect this to get bid out in July. So we're still on that. And I'm trying to work, I have said July a number of times with public, so I'm trying to figure out how to make that happen. And so we're working with one of the FBOs and how we might be able to get fuel from Centennial up here. So at least we have fuel on the field to meet that timeline. So whether the tank happens July, December, the goal is really try to get some fuel on the airfield so we can get that process going in July. And that's kind of where we are on the tank. Unfortunately, it's been a long road and there's still more road ahead, but when we will be coming back in front of you to do the grant agreement, the brief for the FAA grant, and we'll give you a full timeline at that point in time as to where we are on the tank and where we've been.
And so far, we don't see any issues other than the time it takes to get through the processes. So there's nothing to report negative other than we have to wait and see based on the NEPA process.
A question for you. Has this project been considered for a categorical exclusion at this point or not?
It would be, but they still have to go to DC to get reviewed. There's no NEPA process done locally as far as we've been told. It all gets handed up to DC.
And they get to tell us if, yes, that's the right review, or if it's an EA or a full-blown NEPA study.
Can I just confirm and clarify one point, going back to the focus group participants?
Sure.
I think, well, correct me if I'm wrong, were you planning on sharing, we had talked about sharing those names with who you're thinking about selecting for the focus groups before, that is, well, let me just say, sharing those names with the Board of County Commissioners in a briefing? It was clear that you were going to decide who those focus group participants are, not the board, but is that still on your radar screen? We had talked about that. I just wanted to make sure.
So we're willing to do whatever process everybody's comfortable with. We happy to talk with our legal team too to see what we need to be aware of or cognizant of. Right now, the plan is that D&T staff are evaluating the submittals, and then a list of recommended folks for those committees are going to be sent to the airport. Eric will then be able to look at those and come to a conclusion. The idea was that Eric would then release those names to the folks that were chosen. If we need to come back and share those with the Board of County Commissioners, that's a step that we didn't anticipate. But if you do want to give direction to do that, we can certainly do that if you like.
Yeah, I thought we had talked about that though, in a previous meeting. It was clear that the airport was going to make the decision, but we had asked that the recommended names come to the board just so we can take a look at them, provide any feedback, if needed. So I think
Commissioner, what form would you like to do that in? Would you like to do that in the form of the briefing?
whatever you all think is best after consulting with the county attorney's office.
I
would be
will
great.
say from a processing standpoint, I don't know if this is relevant, they don't know any of the names and neither do I. So I should make it more clear. They don't know any of the names. Like I wiped all the personal identification information from every single submission.
Sure.
So when they're looking at the responses that the submitters have provided, they only have the data that is that. At some later date, once they've said we like these specific submissions, then I can unmask who those people are. But they don't have access to that, and the review committee doesn't know who anybody is.
That seems very fair. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
We've tried to level
Yeah.
the playing field as much as possible.
Yeah.
Abel, can you talk specifically who's on the selection committee?
So we have, I think, 4 representatives right now, from T&E, Road and Bridge. I don't recall if P&Z. Chris wanted to participate, but he's on vacation. And I would have to follow up with him to see if he delegated that to somebody else. But it's a mixture of D&T staff. So there's relatively few people that are going through the submissions. And there's pretty good directions on how to do that. Again, we're looking for a variety of perspectives, folks that know a lot about airports and folks that know very little about airports. So we're trying to make sure we have that broad spectrum. And as Eric mentioned, we thought it was important to take names out of the equation because it's more about that diverse perspective than anything else. And so we can work with Joe to see what format is best so that you can review that process and see what our conclusions were before we send out notifications of folks that will be on these committees.
And not to slow it down by any means, but just to have an awareness of, where you all landed and why. And that's what we had talked about. And certainly the board can change its mind on this and say, we can get the release of that when you receive it as well. But remember, we had talked about that.
And I know that when it comes time to actually building the final focus group specifically for the community member group, I will write up some report as to why it is and who got selected for whatever reason, probably prior to them being unmasked. So we have an idea of who those people are from the quantitative study of what they've said rather than who they might represent or who they have.
And we do have time built into this process where we saw it won't delay anything by coming back to the board and talking this more with you.
Thanks.
That's all we have for today. Thanks so much for allowing us some extra time. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no, this was a great session. It was so funny. I just passed Jeannie a Post-it note saying we've got to at least do an hour next time for this. Because there's so much good content that you share with us and lots of questions too. Before you all leave, I also just wanted to give a shout out. Thanks for the great work on the Leadership Evergreen Town Hall panel discussion. That was amazing, as well as the presentation. And then just a shout out to Road and Bridge and Transportation. I feel like I email or call you almost every day, and you're, always wonderful about turning around those updated talking points that we need for different meetings or just answering constituents. All of you are, and we're just grateful for everything that you do. Thank you very much. Planning and zoning, amazing. Airport too. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great to spend the morning with you. All right, we will switch gears, and next up we have commissioner reports. And I will ask commissioners if you have any reports, and then what we may do is, before we go into executive sessions, we may take an early break for lunch if folks want to do that, because we've got 2 items on exec session, and right now it looks like they're going to be about 35 minutes. So maybe we want to break first for lunch and then do those early.
Yeah.
Okay. So commissioners, I'll just ask, do you have any brief reports you would like to make at this time, including myself? You can give me the hook too, because
I insisted that we try to wrap up early today because I have a doctor's appointment, and then I, talk for like 20 minutes about
all good.
advocating in a deficit capital. I
That's
can't
exactly what it's for.
think of anything.
Okay.
So I think I'm good.
Okay, Commissioner Kerr?
Just on Dr. Cog, Commissioner Zenzinger had seen a piece that they're looking at redoing their funding model. And I know that we're going to get more information on that. I don't personally have the information that we need, but I know that staff's looking into it. And so Joe, either you or I reaching out to Dr. Cog I don't think a final decision's been made, but we do need to follow up on that. That's about it.
Yeah, I had a lot of questions about whether what they were proposing was good for us or bad for us, because it seems as if our contribution amount will go down, which is good. That saves the county money, but it also seemed as if the amount of benefit that we get out of Dr. Cog projects was going down as well. So it was kind of like, I'm not sure here which of these three scenarios would be, from our perspective, good.
Do we know, when they talk about and I'll be, when they talk about benefits, are they things that really, and if they decrease, are they things that are really concerning, or do we not know yet? And what is the timeline?
Yes, because it's the percentages around the amount of money that we would get from the federal pass-throughs for our transportation dollars. So it's like, if our membership contribution goes down, yay, we're saving money on the front end with our membership. But if it changes the formula for how much money we can ultimately then get, do we want to do that, right? And then also the third option, which seems to me like the option that they're kind of pushing for, and I don't have any proof for this because I wasn't at the retreat. I haven't heard the conversations, just based on the tenor of the slides. It seems as if they are really going for this third option. It's introducing a new fee that would offset that reduction in membership contribution, but would keep our percentage available. And I'm wondering if it's because it's like a one-time fee that would only apply if you're getting funds for a particular project. So then if we're not receiving it, we don't have to pay it, right? But when we are receiving federal money, then we would. So I was really curious what that was, because I have no context for it. But it seemed to me that that was the mechanism that they were proposing to lower our contribution and to keep the amount of money pretty much the same, except that then on occasion, we'd have to pay this new fee.
Do we know when the board will take a vote on this?
I don't, because I haven't been there.
Not
Andy,
yet.
do you know?
No, I don't.
Okay, sounds like we need.
We didn't talk about it at the last meeting, so.
I can get some clarification and I can provide that to the board.
Oh, that'd be great, Joe.
That'd be great.
Thank you. That sounds good.
I just saw it in random on the slides as I was reviewing them, and I was like, I have no idea if this is good or bad.
That'd be great to unpack that so we know going in. And then also, if we need to do more advocacy with some of the other larger counties if they're facing it too. Commissioner Kerr, anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. I was just going to share a very quick update on Boys and Girls Club. We had a great meeting with the school district. Thanks so much to Mary Berg for being there as well. And then we had our community partners present, and as well as the CEO from Boys and Girls Club. Here's slightly more information. The annual funding gap that they're looking at is $150,000. That is the amount that the district had given year to year. The gap assumes an ongoing annual commitment from Alameda Connects of $25,000 and the county of $25,000. We used to give $50,000, but that dropped because of looming budget cuts. The club estimates a 3% increase in year-over-year expenses. So that's new information from last week. There was also a Lakewood grant, but we think that deadline has passed, which doesn't mean we won't have Kathy Hodgson as part of our next conversation. So as I mentioned, when I first brought this up, I do still think that a good next step is sooner rather than later, and Sarah will work on this I just want to check in again with the Board of County Commissioners, that we pull together some of those key community partners like City of Lakewood, Alameda Connects, some other potential funders within the next 2 weeks, because the timeline is very tight. The club will still be in place through summer, but they already have YMCA lined up to provide services to kids. And what I'd like to do is meet with those folks, see if there's a path forward, and then bring that back to the board with Mary's help, and then we can determine what we want to do. But I don't want to go down this road unless you continue to be in support of this next step, which is just a smaller group of community partners.
Do you get the sense that if we were to, and I'm not suggesting this, but if we were to increase our contribution, that it would be enough to reignite their center and to prevent this closure? And if so, would that be on a permanent basis or a temporary basis?
So two thoughts on that. One, I asked a question very similar to that. And the feedback that I got from Boys and Girls Club is that it is not too late that they are open to looking at funding. I do think that it's going to be very important that we look at sustainable funding over a period of time. And what does that mean for the county in light of other competing demands that we have as well? And then how much are other partners willing to kick in? So Mary Berg and I did a quick debrief after this meeting. We think there are also some foundations that may help with sustainable funding, and one of our local foundations that may help with the bridge funding over this next year. So one thought is, if we can take care of this year and buy time to look at a 5 to 8 year plan moving forward, that might be one way we can, but I did specifically ask, I do not want to go down this route and use our capital, our political capital and our relationship capital with different foundations if Boys and Girls Club and the school district is not serious about keeping the doors open. I feel really strongly about that. And both of those partners said, we are willing to keep those doors open and look.
And if I may say one thing, we need to look at what their uses for that additional money would be, just as a reminder.
Oh, yeah.
We've got
Yeah.
specific contract, and the types of things they can do for us are limited.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So
Yeah.
we have to make sure that it stays within that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think anything is changing in terms of the role of the Boys and Girls Club or how what may change is the way we fund it and additional partnerships. So that's the key thing, getting people around the table to say, here's what the current situation is. What can we do to keep the doors open? And is there interest?
Commissioner, I did take the information you provided yesterday, and Dan and Kate and I had kind of a conversation going. I was posing the question to Dan and Kate that if the board had an interest in trying to plug the financial gap this year, where would we likely try and come up with that? And so, Dan's first go-to was the ARPA interest that we have in the RPPF fund.
Yeah.
So that was one potential. Dan did express concerns about ongoing funding, but if the board had an interest in us looking for, helping fill the gap, that would be one area to look at. Kate may have some other ideas as well.
And I know Mary, that was the first thing that Mary brought up too. Kate, would you like to be involved? It'd be great if you wanted to be part of that meeting, or Dan, or whatever, both, whatever. I want to just be conscientious of people's time too, but, okay, great. That's it from me. So we'll go ahead and I'll ask Sarah to go ahead and schedule that, and if you want to come, we'll try to do that quickly.
I was wrong. I did think of something.
Yes, please.
And it was something that I meant to bring up with the group, but they've already departed. But just today, yesterday, the state legislature closed out the budget. They reconciled all of the amendments from the House and the Senate and came up with their final budget proposal, which will go to probably today. It's probably already happened. It'll start off in the Senate for confirmation in the House and so on and so forth. So there were significant cuts to local governments, very specifically in transportation. So transportation and food pantries were probably the two largest cuts to local governments, and to the tune of 140 million. And I know that I brought this up during our conversations around the budget, but it would just be really, I think, important to now that we know what was cut from the budget to chase those down so that we can enter those into our conversations about the budget. But those two in particular were highlighted in this Colorado Sun article. And so we kind of suspected that they were going to happen, but now we know.
Yeah. It would be interesting, Joe, to reconnect with the food task force that is a countywide group, and they were put in place during COVID. And I haven't seen meeting invitations from them lately, but I would be curious, and I'm going to see Pam Breyer this afternoon, the CEO of the Action Center, and I can ask her about this to see if they're up and running, because that might be a good example of a strategy we want to use, bringing together those food pantries with the county and with other partners involved. They had the Colorado Gives Foundation, they had commissioners on it. I think Mary Berg and her team were part of it as well. So,
well, and the state just restructured the way that we fund food pantries and food banks. because they had different formulas for how they financed them. They were consolidated into a single formula so that we now have certainty about the difference in funding between food pantries and food banks. One is more of a distribution center, one of them is more on the ground and client focused. And so they have different sources of funding. And because they have different sources, it impacted how much the state was willing to give to those different areas. One is receiving a far greater cut to their funding base than the other.
One of those two.
Yes, and I
What-
believe it's the food pantries that are receiving a larger cut than the food banks.
Than the distribution.
So, just, we should verify that for sure, but, those were the two that were called out very specifically as being on the chopping block this year, but there were more. There were other cuts that happened to local government, to the tune of $140 million, so.
See, and I think this is gonna be where we're gonna have to make some very difficult decisions. You know, you
Yes.
look at something like the Boys and Girls Club, which has hard data in terms of the impact on academics, physical health and well-being and more, which we've seen, serving 100 to 150 kids, and food banks, right, that are providing meals to families. And then on top of that, the cuts to CCAP and all these other moving parts,
Yes.
Head Start and more. So
Yeah.
I think, you know, we're gonna have some tough decisions ahead of us.
I think our challenges have just begun.
Yeah, I would agree. It does feel like another wave of COVID, but a different type of
Absolutely.
challenge ahead. So, okay, well, with that, thank you for adding that. Very good.
Sorry.
No, that's great. Let's move into, okay, I'm sorry, County Manager, I'm ready to go to executive session already. Any
Actually,
comments,
it's
Joe?
just a quick follow-up. Commissioners, earlier in our meeting today, you had a question about the Lookout Mountain closure or
Yeah.
gate and the lower gate that was damaged. So I did receive the information, so I'll just share it with you quickly. So the contractor that's been hired to repair the gate will be on site next Monday, which I believe is the 28th. And then as a result of the damage that was created, there's a concrete footer that needs to be put in place. And so it likely is going to be a couple of days after that occurs. So I would imagine, based on why we don't have a firm date, it looks like probably towards the end of next week is when the gate will be repaired and operational again. We're also hiring a private security contractor to help us monitor the gate closures and some of the damage that's been occurring to the gate that folks have been intentionally doing. And so, yeah, that's what happened this last time, a really significant, real significant damage to the gate itself. So anyway, we're trying to get it fixed and we're trying to get it put back in place and activated. And we're trying to have some additional help with enforcement. And of course, we've been working with the Golden Police Department, but there's only so much they can do as well. So we've decided to bring on a private contractor to help initially see if we can move forward and try and prevent any additional damage.
That's unbelievable. That I had not foreseen that by any means.
Is it possible to get a small paragraph about that specifically? Because what I have seen has not mentioned the I guess act of vandalism more or less that occurred. All I have seen appears to be just structural issues with the gate. Which makes it seem as if we did a really bad job picking out, you know, the contract and the vendor and the product.
Sure.
But it's more than that. It is also that it was significantly damaged by an outside actor that has caused problems. And I don't have any information on that.
Sure, we can ask Matt to put together a brief paragraph and forward that to the board.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. That's all I have, Commissioner.
Thanks, Joe.
I don't have any updates, but I do have 2 items for exec session. If I could please have a motion to go into executive session for purposes of discussing the Stafford Hogback Real Estate Exchange for purposes of legal advice under CRS 246402-4B, advice to negotiators under 4E, and direction regarding the purchase, acquisition, lease transfer, or sale of real property. under 4024A. And then the second item is the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport for legal advice under 24640224B.
I move we go into executive session for the reasons outlined by the county attorney.
Second?
Anyone opposed? All right, we'll move into executive session. We'll take a 10 to 15 minute break. As soon as everyone's back, we'll get started.